What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we have sort of a teaser video for you. It is one bust at every position. Are these players going to be able to overcome these obstacles in the 2020 season? It's possible, but when we're looking at where these players are being drafted and the risk factors associated with their situations, typically, we're avoiding them. Before we do get into the video, though, stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which player led the league in catch rate in 2019. The correct answer, James Conner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Congratulations, Carlos Fernandez. You got this one right. Let's see who can get today's question right. Today's stat of the day, which wide receiver averaged the least yards of separation in the 2019 season? Once again, that's which wide receiver averaged the least amount of yards of separation in the 2019 season. Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Also, if you are interested in purchasing our draft package, more information can be found on that at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Link, as always, in the description box below. That's enough about that, though. Without further ado, let's get into the video. And the first player we're going to talk about is a wide receiver, and it's Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills. And we love Stefon Diggs as a player. Every year, we're very vocal about how much we think you should draft him and how he's a bargain, one of the better receivers when it comes to contested catch rate. He does have some big playability, but his hands are solid. His route running tree, quite extensive, and he plays very consistently while he's healthy. Unfortunately, though, there are many factors contributing to the risk of Stefon Diggs, who even if on the Minnesota Vikings would be classified as a risky player. Buffalo, the offense, it's not as powerful in the passing game. Josh Allen is not an accurate passer, or at least he hasn't proven that up to this point in his career. Sub 60% completion percentage. Compare that to Kirk Cousins, who throughout his career is closer to a 70% completion percentage than a completion percentage at even 60%. So in order for him to have the same opportunity share as he would in the previous seasons, the total amount of targets have to come up. You just can't assume that the quality of the targets and the catchable target percentage is going to be as high when you transition from someone like Kirk Cousins to Josh Allen. So essentially, more volume is going to be needed, but are we really going to expect to get more volume? This is a defensive team first. Josh Allen, 10 rushes in a single game is not an outlier for him. This is something he does on a consistent basis. Allen himself only had 5 games last season, 5 of 16, where he had 20 or more completions. Even Cousins, who was on a down year from a volume perspective, was able to produce 9 games of 20 plus completions. So in a low volume passing situation like the Minnesota Vikings had last season, they still outpaced the Buffalo Bills when it comes to opportunity for the receivers. Even with the volume and accuracy being higher over in Minnesota, Stefon Diggs only got 94 targets last season. Overall, even a wide receiver 21 finish is pretty disappointing when you consider the fact that Adam Thielen was not available for the team for most of the season. If you were to tell me heading into the draft that Adam Thielen was only going to put up 400 plus yards and 6 touchdowns, I would have definitely raised my rankings of Stefon Diggs greatly and expected him to finish as a back-end wide receiver 1. Now he's moving over to a team which we've already established is going to have even decreased volume than that, and the volume that he does have is going to be less valuable because the percentage of targets that are going to be catchable are also going to be lower. Then we talk about red zone targets. Well, Josh Allen was somebody who rushed in the ball 8 times in his rookie season, 9 times last season. Those red zone rushes that turn into scores by Josh Allen, those directly take away from the upside of Stefon Diggs. So where is Stefon Diggs currently being drafted? He is the wide receiver 25 after posting a season as the wide receiver 21. That's a pretty hefty investment. That's a guaranteed starter without guaranteed production. We do have a history that has proven that wide receivers transitioning teams usually struggle in year 1. Few examples of that in recent memory. Odell Beckham last year, one of the most skilled receivers in the entire league, struggled heavily and was a complete bust. And while yes, Jarvis Landry did play well think about the year before. Jarvis Landry transitioned to Cleveland, and in year 1, Jarvis Landry also disappointed. Year 2, taking a massive step forward, leading that team in receiving. Allen Robinson, how did he do last year? He did very well, but what about his first year in Chicago? Not as much. 754 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. The list does go on though. There are some receivers that do break that trend. I know a few years back, Brandon Marshall, when he was in the league, he had a career year transitioning to the Jets. That is, however, the exception and not the rule. And then lastly, we didn't even talk about the injury risk that Stefon Diggs brings to your team. While having played no fewer than 13 games in a single season, it has been well known that if Stefon Diggs is banged up, he's one of those players you want to leave on the bench. Bad games are are always on the back of nagging injuries. If he brings in that questionable tag, doesn't practice up until Thursday, the results on that weekend, more often than not, are disappointing. And when you factor in the injury risk, the volume concerns, the decrease in efficiency from the quarterback position, the red zone targets that he's going to lose to Josh Allen's rushing touchdowns, and the obstacle of having to change teams, which has usually been a death sentence, you have a player that has so many risk factors that's being drafted as a back-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 25 right now, who finished as wide receiver 21 a season ago, a season in which there was absolutely no Adam Thielen. So for us, it's almost as if everything has to go his way for him to exceed this ADP, and all it takes is one thing to fall out from under him for him to completely bust. Moving on, guys, we're going to running back, and I'm going to gloss over this one because Nick just made a video about running backs in terrible situations, which did highlight this player, which is Leonard Fournette of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And right off the bat, it's never a good sign if your team is interested in trading you. Pretty smart to put him on the block now, especially him coming off of his career year, in which he did average over 4 yards per carry for the first time since being drafted. I will say, however, he is an inefficient running back at heart. 4 yards per carry is not a guarantee as he heads into the 2020 season. Jay Gruden, now as the offensive coordinator, has consistently led below average rushing teams, ranking at best 17th. Not only that, the receiving volume that Fournette was able to attain last year, that being 76 receptions, is also not guaranteed. Between Chris Thompson, Adrian Peterson, and Darius Geis last season, they combined for a mere 68 catches. Compare that to Fournette's 76, and you can easily see how passing to the running back position may be an area where it actually weakens from 2019 to 2020. And did we mention they did sign Chris Thompson? So Chris Thompson is no longer a Redskin as well. He is a Jacksonville Jaguar. So he will definitely be taking over the clear passing responsibilities, which not only will take away from the receiving upside of Fournette, but will decrease his overall snap share on clear third and longs. Adding another receiver like Chris Thompson on the field while healthy is going to be in their game plan. Raekwon Armstead was also featured as a receiving weapon in this offense. While not given heavy volume, he only had 24 targets. It's still a lot compared to his role as a rusher, which was 35 total rush attempts. It's a role we could see expanded upon this season. Another factor which could bring risk to the overall volume of Leonard Fournette. If Leonard Fournette's not getting volume, he's not beneficial for your fantasy team. And when it comes to heavy volume with Leonard Fournette, you know you're playing with fire. You're talking about one of the more injury-prone running backs in the entire league. Sports Injury Predictor gives him over a 56.8% chance to get injured in 2020. His injuries date way back to his days in LSU, where in his final season, he aggravated an ankle injury 3 separate times to miss 6 games. In his first 2 years as a pro, the injuries continued to stack up, missing 1/3 of the total games he was able to possibly appear in. So you have a player that the team is willing to trade away, bringing in an offensive coordinator that has a history of an unsuccessful running game, that despite being on a team playing from behind consistently, refused to throw to the backfield, that brought in their own specific pass-catching running back to take away even more touches from him. Add on to that the severe risk of injury that he brings to your team, and overall you have a player that's one of the riskiest that you could possibly pick in the early rounds. Let's move over to the tight end position though, and the tight end bust to me is extremely simple. It's Hunter Henry of the Los Angeles Chargers. As for an explanation, all I should really have to do is tell you his ADP. He's currently coming off the board as the tight end 6. The tight end 6, guys. Hunter Henry ranked as the tight end 10 on a points per game basis. And yes, I understand he only played in 12 games, which is why I did rank him by points per game rather than overall finish. But that's a season in which he did have Phillip Rivers throwing the ball to him. Phillip Rivers historically has heavily relied on the tight end position to move the ball downfield, and especially in the red zone. Tyrod Taylor, it's a different situation. Even when he was on Buffalo, we were never seeing consistent targets to Charles Clay, who still had some good years left in the tank. So to assume Hunter Henry is going to be one of the main targets in the offense, at least consistent enough to put up tight end 6 type production, that's one of the riskiest bets you can make. It's almost a guarantee that the game is going to slow down in Los Angeles. They're going to play a more well-rounded approach offensively and defensively, so scoring opportunities may not be as frequent as they were in 2019 and before. Hunter Henry has a career high in receiving yards of 652. We've seen his touchdowns decrease in each season since being drafted. The games he's played in has also decreased since being drafted. And with the players being drafted ahead of him, that being Travis Kelce, Ertz, Waller, Kittle, and Andrews, is there any one of those tight ends you reasonably see him potentially overtaking if all of them stay healthy? No, which is why he's almost being drafted at his ceiling, and that's not even factoring in the amount of risk you have to take on by drafting him to your team. He has never played a full 16-game season, he's had season-ending injuries, and in order to get him on your team, you're going to have to invest a 6th-round draft pick, which is a stage of the draft where wide receivers and running backs still have major roles in their offense. For us, even a player like Evan Engram, who is a much higher injury concern, still makes for a much better pick, because imagine he does play 16 games, he does have that top 3 type of upside. Do we see Tyrod Taylor extracting a top 5 performance out of Hunter Henry? That's quite a stretch. Maybe if Justin Herbert comes in, we know rookies do tend to rely on the tight end position, but there's no saying how long it's going to take for that transition to actually happen. And if by the time it actually happens, if Hunter Henry is still even on the field at all, because we have seen him deal with his fair share of injuries. So for us, we have him ranked 4 spots below ADP as the tight end 10, which is much more reasonable, factoring in both upside and risk. So if he currently stays as the tight end 6 based on ADP, you can guarantee we have 0 shares of Hunter Henry in the 2020 season. So the final player on this list is a quarterback, and it really hurts me to say this because I know he has a ton of fans, but it has to be Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. And I understand betting against players who have a chip on their shoulder is never a great idea, especially if they're highly skilled like Aaron Rodgers is, but really with this one you have to take a step back, forget the name for a second, and just look at the facts. This is a team that provided Aaron Rodgers 0 additional weapons out of the draft. They also didn't bring in any big names in free agency to help him out in the passing game. Oh, and did I mention it? They drafted a quarterback in the 1st round. The team is really confusing right now. It's almost as if they're trying to get Aaron Rodgers out of there. This may work in reverse and light a fire underneath him, but who's he going to be throwing the ball to? Yes, Davante Adams. He's going to be a wide receiver 1, arguably one of the best wide receivers in fantasy football for the upcoming season, but that's because there are no other reliable weapons in this passing game that he can truly count on. You have Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who proved to be absolutely garbage a season ago, and then newly added Devin Funchess. We do like the upside of Lazard this year, but the Packers aren't doing anything to help Aaron Rodgers, and that has a strong chance of impacting the overall upside he has for fantasy football in 2020. This team also proved to be very reliant on the run game as they approached the red zone and the green zone. Aaron Jones led the league in rushing touchdowns a season ago, and if you really break it down, the last time Aaron Rodgers was able to average 20 plus fantasy points per game was in 2016. The time before that, 2014, the roster was completely different, and we can't forget that Aaron Rodgers also has had his fair share of injuries as well. He's not a terrible pick where he's currently being drafted, but if anything were to happen to Davante Adams, who may need to take some time off if he does get a concussion due to the amount of concussions he has had previously, Aaron Rodgers may have a difficult time pushing the ball down the field consistently. Come draft day though, I think you'll find a lot of people in your league will gravitate towards Aaron Rodgers. He still does have that name value, and this is also one of the latest rounds you could get him in the fantasy drafts, but like I said, hasn't averaged 20 fantasy points per game since 2016, and that is something the guys at the top of the league, Lamar Jackson's, Patrick Mahomes, they're doing consistently every season. So he's not necessarily in elite company anymore. We haven't seen it for quite some time, and the name value is going to force you to be in a position to take him earlier than you want if you want to nab him on your team, and if that does happen, it's a choice you're likely going to regret. But guys, that's gonna do it for this video. Let us know your top bust at each position in the comment section down below. If you did enjoy this video though, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.